Okay, Amy, so you've alluded to randomization. We have a map now.
Yep.
What's next?
Yeah, so our map is a very low stress situation. We've just scribbled something and hopefully we've put the plants of interest, if there are plants in your question, on that map. And what we need to do now is randomly select at least 3 plants because we need to get an average so that it's representative of the soil that we're testing.
Right.
We might do 3, we might do up to 5, depends what we've chatted about. But we're really looking to see how can we pick 3 random plants as quickly and as effortlessly as possible in this next stage of the process.
Okay, sounds good. Now, getting a representative sample makes total sense. But how about, there's some situations that can potentially affect that?
Yeah, totally,
right?
totally. So Dr. Elaine talks about, you don't want to accidentally sample where the mouse peed last night.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So if you're testing that soil and you know that the biology is particularly different in that section, we can surmise because something different happened in that part of soil.
Right.
So we're trying to get our average. So all sorts of things could affect the soil.
How about
right?
if somebody dropped a bag of lime or some other type of fertilizer?
Yep, that could have happened.
Yeah.
Or it could be nature's fertilizer. Maybe a raccoon was munching on something at some point in time in that particular spot.
Or a deer made a deposit.
A deer made a deposit. A squirrel made it their final resting place.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if things down to some areas are watered more than other.
That's right.
And then the biology is different as a result.
Totally. Like maybe your drip irrigation system is, not dripping as evenly as you expected it to. All sorts of things can affect the biology there. So we're wanting to get a representative average.
Absolutely. And it's just also important to try as best as we can know the history of our property. Of course, that's not always possible.
Yep.
But even just kind of trying to keep track of certain things that happen and noting them because they may come to affect things later.
Absolutely. Yeah. How that soil has been managed in the past is definitely something we should be recording and thinking about on our map. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that in the winter too, when we have some time.
When we've got lots of time in the winter to plan ahead, planning all of our seasonal projects.
Absolutely.
So I feel like when it comes to sampling, if it is the area where the mouse peed last night, if we're looking at 3 different plants and then testing the biology around all 3 of those, we'll be able to tell if one of those plants is what we would call an outlier or something that's a bit different to what we're trying to answer. If we're putting all of those samples in the same bag, it's a little trickier to find that out. So the more randomized samples we're putting in the bag, the better the average we're getting for that soil. All depends on your budget and how we answer your question.
Are there any other reasons why randomization might be important?
Beyond the mouse peeing in a certain spot.
Yeah. So the deer deposit.
All that stuff. So we're just, as humans, we are inherently biased. I know sometimes when I'm sampling in a field, it's very tempting to just go and grab samples from the plants that are easiest to access.
Right.
That's a pretty big bias. The other thing is looking at... we're just kind of drawn to the biggest, healthiest plants sometimes, or to the sickest looking ones. Really, we need to be randomizing within those groups to get our best average kind of thing. So we have to take our decision making out of it and make it up to chance when we're randomizing.
Okay. So now we've got our map. We understand the importance of randomization. What's next? How do we do this?
How do we do this? So it's really straightforward, but it's a bit of a hiccup for people to understand. So I just want to make it seem easy. And so what we're doing is we're just taking a couple of minutes. We've got our map. We're going to put 10 grid squares on top of the map. We're going to be really careful to exclude the ponds or the ridges or any area that we've identified that we're not interested in sampling around. So then we've got our scribbled map with our 10 grid squares, and then we need to randomly select between 3 and 5 of those grid squares. So one way to do it is very old-fashioned, which is to put the numbers 1 to 10 in a hat.
Pull it out of a hat,
Pull them out, and then you just circle the numbers that you've pulled out on your grid squares.
And there's a newer...
There is, for high-tech people, you'd use your phone. And Google random number generator, and up it pops, and it's really straightforward. We'll show it on the screen in a minute, but basically you just type in 1 to 10 and then hit the button. and it will just randomly throw out numbers. And then you're like, sweet, here are my random selections.
Boom.
Go to your grid, circle the numbers that were randomly selected, and those are the grid squares that you're going to go to. Now, I'm not suggesting that you get a measuring tape and measure out the grids on your garden bed or wherever you're sampling. It's more like you eyeball it. I think this is grid square number 6 that was selected. This is roughly the middle of grid square number 6. You look down, this is the plant I'm sampling. So the plant in the middle of that randomly selected grid square is what you're going to sample around.
Perfect.
Then you move to the next randomly selected grid square, find the middle plant and sample around that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope that sounds as easy as I find it and as easy as it actually is, but it does tend to be a bit of a stumbling block. Feels like we're doing really sciencey stuff. We are doing really sciencey stuff, but we're trying to make it simple and straightforward.
Right. Totally. So is there anything else we should know about randomization?
Don't stress it.
Cool.